Let's take a look at entrepreneurship versus social entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship, for me, and I assume this is what you've been studying in your boot camp, I'm going to define this as being selfish. This is about you. This is about your skills. This is what you need to succeed in the contemporary world. And these skills these extra musical skills will allow you to have an edge, which in turn will allow you to be selected more than anybody else. Social entrepreneurship, which can well come out of just pure musical entrepreneurship, is something a little bit different. It's motivated by the need for social justice and social change. It can be a number of things. It can be both not-for-profit, it can be for-the-profit world as well. But they define profit very differently in social entrepreneurship. It's really, the term profit is defined as being about the bottom line, as being about social impact. The things that it has tackled, and tackled very, very successfully, have been really difficult issues, from poverty, abuse, women's rights, corruption, education, children at risk, food deprivation, housing, economic development, and what we are doing to the environment. And all of this is taken forward by the most extraordinary leaders, and we'll be talking more about their characteristics in a little bit. And what they are able to do is to break the cycle of poverty. And by breaking that cycle, they bring people into a different economic orbit. So, we're now going to delve into social entrepreneurship, but we're going to delve into it from a very wide arc. So this is something of a long story, so stay with me during this story. So how do we mentally organize the world? Do we assume that everything is just dandy and fine and in its place? And what is culture, and how do you define culture? Culture for me is not about the finest Rembrandt, it's not about the greatest classical performance or opera. It's about our commonly held beliefs, ideas, practices, behaviors, all of which makes us the society that we are. So everything has a culture. This academy has a culture. This room has a culture of a sort. Your family has a culture. Your circle of friends has a culture. And classification is about your intuition. It's very, very innate. It's how we observe and take in our surroundings and the people that we meet and the situations that we find ourselves in. Building, a piece of advertising, a new recording, we instantly classify it. That's part of our social interactions. My wife is very, very good at this. She can, at a reception or a cocktail party or something, I don't know how she does it, but she can turn around, look at somebody and go snap, and turn around again, and then give me a complete classification of that person, how they're dressed, where they bought their clothes from, whether their hair has been well coiffed, whether they have split ends, the type of jewelry they're wearing, if their shoes are expensive. Instant classification. I'm sure many of you have those same qualities as well. But we do this on a macro level in the world as well. We sort things into our world, our culture. What is not our world is therefore not our problem and is not our issue. We are interested in playing in our own culture, not necessarily in the culture of others, or in their problems or issues. We focus upon our interests, and we come up with a range of mental models which we put into boxes that allows us to deal with the complexity of the world that we find ourselves in. I'm staying with this theme for one more slide. Then we decide how to interact, how to think and behave. We organize our space in the world. We have a huge reliance upon how we're defined by our jobs. Our jobs are very important, not just in terms of money, but who we are. And we try and understand the cosmos, our inner cosmos and the outer cosmos. And we understand how to use our time as well. And we describe ourselves by way of distinct social systems that exist between individuals, families, groups, institutions, genders, religions, political parties, to make a coherent whole of all of this. Which then leads us to the big question: how do we understand the world? What mental map do we have of the world? And what does it mean to be human? What habits have we created in our thinking by using these intuitive techniques? And do we still have the ability to question and challenge? And we'll see today whether that is the case. So here's a quick exercise, fun exercise in classification. All of you will respond to the following photographs instantly. You will be classifying them. So just shout out, if you like, a word that comes to your mind as you look at these pictures.
Fear.
Fear? Okay. Slow. Okay.
Shark.
Yeah. Well, we know it's the shark, but how do you classify it?
Is the first word that came to my mind.
Okay. What's a good word to come to your mind? What? Danger. Okay. Good.
Cute.
Cute. Okay. Cute does it. Majestic. Okay. That's very good. Very quick classifications. Good exercise. Well done. You all get A's for this one. In certain cultures, every single one of those pictures would be seen as a food source. Different type of classification. This one, help me with this one. I did a little bit of research, and this is not a picture of a mountain necessarily. This is a picture of snow. And what I learned was that in native Nordic languages, there are 300 different words and classifications for snow. Now, did you know that, and is that correct?
Slight exaggeration, I would say.
Slight exaggeration. Well, it was an American article, so you know how they are. Okay. Classification in music. I mean, we are great at doing that. We're trained, we have expertise, we have knowledge, we have taste. And staying with music, we also apply value and value judgments to the type of music that we like to support. And sometimes that can create barriers of perception between certain types of music as well. So, if we have an innate ability to classify, how would you use that as part of your understanding of the world? What does it mean to be human? Is there such a thing as saying that we have a collective humanity, a collective responsibility for others? And should we care? And why should we care? So we do a quick exercise here. The next, I think, 3 slides are about an exercise of putting yourself in somebody else's head and walking around and trying to understand how they understand the world, how they classify, and how they understand humanity. And I've started with the mental maps of 2 leaders. Well, one's a world leader, one is a potential world leader. How do they understand the world? How do they classify it? And what culture would they like to see promoted? A word? A quick reaction word, straight off the top. Aggressive.
All you need is love.
All you need is love. I can hear him singing that as well. Okay? And then this gentleman. He may be the President of the United States next January, so. And I'm terribly sorry, but I have a very British sense of humor. So I actually answered my own question for you in the next slide. So just indulge me with this. I think that's how he sees the world. So staying with that, you're staying within somebody else's brain. You're seeing how they classify the world, how they understand the world, what culture they wish to see. Stay with these people. How do they see the world? How do they classify it? What is the culture that they would like to see? And then what about these people? How do they see the world? How would they classify their existence? Do they have humanity? Do they matter? How would all of you classify them? Are they part of your world? Are they part of your culture? So let's talk about our world. It's unbelievable, our world, the world that we live in. We have the greatest discoveries. We can send a rocket to Pluto and send photographs back. We can plan a manned mission to Mars. We have some astonishingly exciting cities. It's a privilege to live within the superabundance of all the experiences in a world that can virtually give us anything that we want at the press of a button. Mankind has never enjoyed such a quality of existence in its entire history, ever. We have beautiful cities. We have incredible healthcare. We have the finest education in the world. And we have technology. It's the sort of technology that sci-fi can't even imagine. Your iPhone has more firepower than the Starship Enterprise. You do know the Starship Enterprise, yeah? I believe that we understand the world through stability. Financial stability, social stability, family stability, political stability. And that we can only address the idea of change through the prism of stability, because the infrastructure and the superstructure appear to be permanent, which is why the refugee crisis seems to shake its very foundations. So does that attitude make you conservative or progressive in your thinking? Now, the rest of the world, unfortunately, the rest of the world is in the majority. 40% are in poverty, 20% are in deep poverty, which means that they have an expenditure of less than $1 a day. Slavery, which is the one in the top left corner there, is an amazing growth industry in the world. There are over 30 million people in slavery. And you might think, well, yeah, it must be just in Bangkok or some parts of China. It is not. It's in Europe. It's in England. It's in America as well. It's a $150 billion industry. There are 60 million homeless refugees. We're up there with the end of the Second World War. And as we know, there's a huge growth in terrorism. We're all concerned about this. We would all much prefer for these problems not to exist. But, dare I say, we like to keep our distance. So we're very pleased that we have government agencies and we have aid agencies that become a transaction for all of us so that we can know that something good is happening, but we're not really that bothered about the solutions. We buy our distance. And just as an example of extreme politics coming out of that, Jarosław Kaczynski, who is the leader of Poland, said about the migrant crisis, They are bringing diseases and parasites to Europe. Then there's our beautiful planet, which we are screwing up. And we're screwing it up because of inertia, a lack of will, and vested interest, where we can have a major conference, as we did just a couple of months ago, where it was mooted that there should be a right to pollute. A right to pollute for those countries who, unlike the developed West, now feels it's their turn to actually mess up the whole of the world. There is irrefutable evidence that we are about to experience a catastrophe. And I'll just give one argument on this based upon a little bit of research. In the 1990s, there was a union of concerned scientists who produced a combined statement about what we're doing to the planet, signed by 1,700 scientists and 104 Nobel Prize laureates. That's a lot of firepower. I think they deserve to be taken seriously. And this was the first line. Human beings in the world are on a collision course. So let's stay with breaking the cycle. Outcomes of poverty. Well, we know what the outcomes of poverty are. Food scarcity, miserable living conditions, poor sanitation, violence, crime, poor health, disease, low life expectancy, high infant mortality. The causes of this is a negative cycle. And you can look at this little diagram in two ways. You can look at it as a negative cycle where there is no investment in people, there is no education, and as a result of that, skills are not taught. Out of that comes no job opportunities, no money. That impacts families, and it makes society absolutely terrible and miserable. Or you could look at it as a virtuous cycle of investment in education, which leads to skills, which leads to more jobs, which leads to entrepreneurial thinking, which leads to economic development, which in turn benefits the family and develops society as well. Poverty is not created by poor people. They are the victims of being born into that cycle, just as rich children are born into the cycle of wealth. Poverty is an externally imposed phenomenon. It's an externally imposed phenomenon. And we need to remove the obstacles that keep people in that loop. Have you come across the phrase, the deserving poor? You ever heard that one? The deserving poor is used a lot in England and it's used a lot in America. And for years I thought that the deserving poor meant, oh, well, they deserve help. It doesn't. It means they deserve to be poor. They're crap. They are the cost of doing business. I would maintain that they're human beings with potential, ideas, creativity, curiosity, hopes and dreams and aspirations, with ambition and the need to collaborate and the need to improve. And what a huge resource that is. What an asset is being squandered. Is our world purely extractive, or is it inclusive? And what on earth is the place of music within all of that? So what is a social entrepreneur? Well, I rather like them. I always think it's the best course of action is to trust good people that they will do good things. I don't think it's enough to think that governments and politicians can find the best way forward. I think it's in our vested interest to find that ourselves. And my metaphor is that great things happen in the same way as water will always find a way down a hill, no matter what the obstacles are. And I believe that the best of our humanity will always come forward with compassion and creativity in order to resolve some of our greatest issues. And a social entrepreneur, I think that they show unbelievable motivation. They're great leaders, they're agents of change. They promulgate solutions in a really pragmatic way, and they can juxtapose and balance seemingly impossible conflicts of having a vision and being a visionary, with at the same time being a pragmatist and being a realist as well. And as I said earlier, the way that profit is defined within this system by these people is through social impact, whether it's in a not-for-profit or a for-profit context. So I'm going to take you through some famous examples of social entrepreneurs, some of whom I'm sure will be very, very known to all of you. My first one is Malala. We all know Malala? Yeah? An extraordinary lady, still a teenager, although it feels as if she's been on the planet a very long time. Her passion is education, and her passion is education for girls. And she wanted the minimum years for that to be 12 of top quality education, which would be almost similar to everything happening in the West as well. She was born in 1997 in West Pakistan. Her father ran a school as well and was a great educationalist and an outspoken critic of the Taliban. I don't know how much you know about the Taliban, but the Taliban, through Sharia law, bans education for girls after the age of 8. Nothing after the age of 8. If a woman is ill and she needs to go to see a doctor, she has to go with a chaperone, which means that most women don't go to the doctor. If a woman is attacked and raped, she is prosecuted because she incited the man. You're talking about an extraordinary way of looking at humanity and the world. Malala became known as a great critic of the Taliban and a huge advocate of education for girls. And she started writing about this for the BBC, and as a result of that, the Taliban issued a death threat. In 2012, a masked gunman stood up her school bus, called for her by name, and shot her through the head, neck, and shoulder. And somehow or other, she survived. That became a rallying point and a symbol for girls' education. And 2 million people in West Pakistan signed a right to education petition. She has been a huge advocate, a champion for all of this, and she got the Nobel Peace Prize. And with the Peace Prize money, she invested all of that in a girls' school. Now, do you know this person? And have you come across microloans? Yeah? The students come across microloans? No? So a microloan, listen to a definition of a microloan. It's extraordinary. A microloan is given to impoverished borrowers who lack collateral, steady employment, and credit history. Now, as students, you probably have 1 or 2 issues getting bank accounts with certain banks. Just imagine if you went in, and you've got wonderful potential in higher education, you're going to be going somewhere. Imagine if you went into a bank here and said, I'm sorry, I'm impoverished, and I've got no collateral, I'm not employed, and I have no credit history. What would they say to you? Yeah, out. You wouldn't get past the first teller that you went to. The microloan system supports entrepreneurs, and it alleviates poverty. And the interesting thing is that these loans are given mostly to women. 95% of the client base is women. The repayment rates are between 95 to 98%. That's really amazing, 95 to 98%. I think the West could learn a thing or two from that. It provides financial services for the poor. And Mr. Yunus up there believes that the poor, those in poverty, are smart, strong, motivated, committed, and hardworking, and they want to proactively help themselves and to improve their lives. So, the average loan is about $100. Doesn't sound very much, but that can be life-changing. So let's say a livestock owner would take out a loan and would buy more animals. That would produce more milk, that would increase the income for the family, which would mean that their children could be taken away from the farm and actually put into school. So there's a wonderful cycle of improvement that could happen. They can afford to buy mosquito nets, which means that there's no disease in the family. And they can have a wonderful luxury, which is putting sugar in their tea. A seamstress can invest in technology. And technology, in her terms, is buying a sewing machine. And if she buys a sewing machine, it means her output is increased hugely, which means that she can employ other people, which in turn breaks the cycle of poverty. Grameen, which Mr. Yunus runs, is a bank for the poor. And he's very proud in saying that it doesn't have a lawyer in sight. He has 8.3 million borrowers, and he believes that people in poverty are, in fact, intuitive entrepreneurs and leaders. One of his recent programs has been to go to beggars, the so-called untouchables, and to offer loans of up to $12. And 500,000 beggars have taken him up on this. And it's meant that a large number of them have stopped begging because they've become entrepreneurs, taking around food supplies and becoming personal shoppers for people higher up in the economic strata. This is a good guy doing great things, and he's promulgating a really big idea. Here are a couple of other quite famous examples. This is Blake with Tom's shoes. Do you have Tom's shoes here? No? Tom's shoes are all over the States. Blake went to Argentina years ago, in 2006, and he was taken to all sorts of parts of the country. And what he saw was young people suffering from extreme disease. The disease had been caused because they don't have shoes. And as a result of not having shoes, their feet were blistered, they were cut, bacteria got into their systems, and they became extremely ill. So he was very moved and motivated as a result of this, and he decided to do something about it. And he came up with a unique selling proposition, which is, if you buy a pair of my shoes, I will donate a pair of shoes to those in poverty. And when I was in New York about 3 weeks ago, I was thinking about this forum, and I found this on the street. As a USP, unique selling proposition, that's pretty amazing. He has sold between 1 and 2 million pairs of shoes, which means that 1 to 2 million pairs of shoes have gone to people in poverty. Now here's another one. This is Scott. He has an organization, it's a for-profit that doesn't make a profit, as he describes it. And his study of the world led him to the conclusion that 80% of all diseases on the planet relate to the lack of clean water. So he has been creating access to clean water to over 1 million people in more than 17 countries.